Hello. On one of my earlier videos I built this John Malecki inspired bar stool. I'll add link to the original Malecki video in description, and you can also see the link to the one where I built the first one. Since that one I built two more, so I now have three at my house, and you can also see the walnut table I built earlier, also linked if you want to see how I built that one. I'm in the process of getting my summer house ready, and I thought that as I have the templates ready for these tools, I'll build three more to my summer house, but this time I'm using ash instead of walnut, and I used slightly different techniques in building these three new ones. Up until now I have been building without a jointer. I have been waiting for it for quite a few months. Finally I have it, so now I can mill my lumber properly, and naturally this project started with milling my wood using the standard way of jointer, planer and then table saw. My jointer is not fully calibrated yet, but it was good enough. Later on this video you can see my other new investment that's not installed yet when I started filming this. More on that later. What you see me doing here is drawing the lines for the pieces I need, and I'm using the templates I had created earlier. After I had all the pieces marked out, I moved over to my bandsaw to cut them roughly to the correct size. I'm cutting near the lines, but I am making sure that I will not go over, because I will be using my router table later on to get them to the exact sizes I need using the template. I didn't film everything. Some of the cuts I actually used my chop saw, but most of the ones I did, as you see on the video, using my bandsaw. For some of the parts I did an exact cut, because these are the ones I will be using for the first glue up, so that's the reason why I'm doing my chop saw with these ones. For the matching pieces I needed to get the line straight as well, so I'm using this table saw jig that I built earlier for another project. And this really made my life easier, because then I could do these 6 repeating cuts very easily. One thing you might notice is that my table saw is struggling a bit. There's a lot of burn marks, but that's fine because I will be sanding them off anyway at later phase. For joinery I'm doing the same thing than what John Malecki was doing on the original one, so using dominoes and glue, and it seems to be holding up quite fine even under my weight. So for the first glue up I will do all 6 side pieces that I will need, and then I move over to the router table for getting them to the correct size and shape. I tried using the traditional blue tape and CA glue for attaching the template, but that wasn't as secure as I wanted, so I switched over to a more sturdy 2-sided tape. Whenever I use the blue tape and CA glue, it doesn't feel as secure as I want it, especially when I'm at the router table. So I wanted to make sure that the template will not be moving during my routing, so that's why I did it this way. I'm using a standard and quite cheap flush trim bit for this part, and it does the job quite well. For the rounded parts there was a bit more material to be removed, so I needed to take small pieces and then slowly work my way so that the piece actually touches the template and gets all the material off. Pretty easy one to do. After all the 6 pieces were done, then I needed to mill more wood for the bench or upper section. And there I made pretty big mistake. I ended up messing up pieces of my wood, and I didn't have enough ash. So I actually needed to use maple for 2 of the benches and ash for 1. I could have gone and bought more, but I have over 1 hour drive to my wood supplier, so as this is going to my summer house, I figured it's fine, but you can see it in the end result that the wood doesn't exactly match. But it's good enough as it is personal use and for my summer house. Then getting ready for my second glue up, I'm using dominoes again for alignment, and before gluing them up I decided to sand the leftovers from the double-sided tape that I used during the router operation. I probably need to buy some different brand blue tape because I've seen it used so many times by other YouTubers, so maybe the one I'm using just doesn't stick, because using this double-sided tape is very sticky, as you can see that I needed to do this extra step and sand all away before I could actually start the glue up. But it's not a big issue. I mean, sanding this only took a few minutes, so we'll see if I buy more or not. Gluing this is pretty simple because I only needed a few clamps, and the dominoes obviously help with alignment, so nothing special here. The only thing I actually needed to stand on my table to get the upper clamps in place, but yeah, just hard to film. At least you can enjoy nice footage watching my shoes. And moving on. I seem to always use too much glue, so then obviously I needed to wipe them out first with a dry cloth and then with a damp one to make my life a bit easier when it's time to sand these. I made these upper sections slightly too large on purpose, and then I just used my circular saw, free-handed the most of the chunks out, and then I used my belt sander to get them roughly in a correct shape before taking out my more gentle sander that I actually used for the more finalized sanding that I will be doing. I'm sure there are more elegant ways in how to get this shape, but this seems to be working fine for me. After the second glue up, I used the traditional sawdust and wood glue trick to fill in the few voids that were left. And for those ones I took out my Rotex to sand most of it away before getting to the random orbital sander that I will be using for the rest of the build. At this stage I still found a few very small holes that I just applied wood glue in and then sanded over, so that got them patched up quite nicely. They are pretty much invisible in the final product. For the actual sanding I went the usual way, starting from 80 grit, then 120 and then 180. And I'll spare you from the hours and hours of sanding I needed to do. It actually took much more time than I thought. I don't know why, but I thought I would be sanding only 1 or 2 hours, but I think in reality it took probably 4 or even 5 hours for getting these 3 stools sanded and edge trimmed. So yeah, I guess sanding just takes time. For the bottom I added a small chamfer to prevent splitting, and then everywhere else I decided to go with a roundover bit. That's a slight deviation from the ones I have at my home, where I added a chamfer to all over. So for these ones I wanted to see and try how the overall stool looks like with a roundover, and I think it's actually quite nice that way as well. So before I do the final sanding with 180 grit, I decided to spray water on them to lift the grain. This is something I have learned with some previous builds, that if I skip this step after applying the finish, the end result will be a bit rough. So after I had sprayed them with water, I went home for the day because I needed to let them dry. Then I came back the next morning to do the final sanding and finishing and getting the stools ready. You might have seen that I always use the pencil trick when I'm sanding to make sure that I have actually covered all surfaces that I need to sand. That just makes life a lot easier. So behind you can actually sometimes see my new table saw. That is this second new investment that I mentioned. So I bought a Laguna F3 table saw, and my initial impression is that it's a great table saw. So huge improvement over my previous one. But anyway, back to this build. I'm using Rubio for finishing these. Rubio is something I'm familiar with. It's very easy to apply and I'm lazy. 1 coat is enough, so this is just my go-to finish. I also like the feeling that the furniture is left after applying Rubio to it, so it doesn't give this plasticky feel. You can actually feel the wood, Maybe it's not the best protection, but to be honest, I've had zero problems with it so far. So as mentioned, it is my go-to finish that I will be probably using in the future as well for pretty much everything I do. Maybe if I do some outdoor stuff, then I will be using different finish, but for all indoor stuff, I think I will always default to Rubio. After applying Rubio, letting it be there for 3 to 5 to 10 minutes, then I just wipe all the excess off. And then I'm actually done with the build. So fairly happy with how they turned out. Of course, you can see the problem I had with having to use maple for 2 of the 3, but still I'm fairly happy with this one. And now I have built 6 of these in total. For the next ones I will be doing something very different, so I'm done with these for a while. But I hope you liked the video and catch you on the next one. If you like the content, I would really appreciate a subscription and a like for this video. It really makes a difference.